Greetings, students. Today I want to continue introducing you to Aristotle's thought by doing a little Aristotelian epistemology. Now, epistemology in philosophy means theory of knowledge. And what I want to talk to you today is about how Aristotle thinks thinking works. Isn't that fun that we're thinking about thinking? So, in Aristotelian epistemology, there are three acts of human thinking, or operations of the human mind, that are sort of nested inside of each other and related to each other, and all go together to make up thinking about thinking. Right? So first we have simple apprehension of a concept, which is expressed verbally in a term. We have judgment, claiming a proposition, a statement, is true or false, expressed in a declarative sentence. And then finally we have reasoning through inference, expressed as a sequence of declarative sentences or propositions that we've learned to call argument. So let's talk about simple apprehension first. Imagine with me that you and two companions are walking through the icy wastes of the Arctic. Oh, look, I misspelled Arctic. Imagine I just went up to the board and spelled it right. There we go. And, alright, so let's start again. You and two companions are walking through the icy wastes of the Arctic, lost and freezing to death, and come upon a camp. And in the camp you see a campfire. Upon seeing it, you all immediately become aware through your senses of the marvelous dancing flames, and your mind simply experiences a concept which you express through the term, which is like Helen's names, fire. Of course, your Italian companion experiences the same concept, but uses the term fuoco, while your French companion names it feu. But you all mean the same thing. Now, in this act of simple apprehension, we are simply aware of the concept fire and do not form any judgments about it. We do not affirm or deny anything about it, but are simply aware of it. In fact, that word apprehend means to seize, to grasp, and we're sort of seizing or grasping it with our mind. And it all begins with simple sense experience, but it doesn't end there. Because sense experience itself is not enough, as Helen Keller showed us. Sense perception is the act of seeing or hearing or smelling or tasting or touching, as when you and your companions first saw the camp and the campfire. But from this sense and experience, you and your companions apprehend a concept that shows what it is you are sensing. You are, after all, the living creature that has the logos. So any mental image you have shouldn't be confused with the concept. The psychologically based mental image is the image of an object formed in your mind as a result of a sense perception of that object, while the concept of a thing is an abstract idea in the mind which signifies or stands for the thing itself. So simple apprehension occurs when the mind grasps the concept or general meaning of an object without affirming or denying anything about it. We simply become aware of what it is, and we then give it a name, or what in logic is usually called a term. The actual words you and your companions used upon sighting the fire and beginning to feel its warmth. And this is where we all start. This is where thinking begins, but it's not where it ends. Now, when we make a judgment, we either combine or divide two concepts to form a statement or a proposition which makes a claim about how things really are. A statement with a truth value. A statement is anything with truth value, right? So it's not a command, an explanation, or so on. And remember that a proposition is the meaning of a statement. It's what the sentence asserts or claims to be the case, and so it must be true or false. And it's not identical with the written word or sentence, as it is raining and es regnet. All assert the same claim. So when we make a judgment, we're making a truth claim. And a judgment occurs when two apprehended concepts are either joined or divided by being affirmed or denied. When we make a judgment, we compare two concepts, and so the actual things represented by these concepts, and then affirm or deny that they agree with one another in some way. So, as your group approaches the pond of frozen seawater where someone has made camp, one of you, a pessimist, says, fire is a mirage, or maybe le feu est un mirage. Oh, I can't pronounce French at all. I'm much better with German or Italian. Now here the concept mirage is joined with the concept fire. Then a more hopeful member of the group says, il fuoco non è un miraggio, making the claim that the fire is not a mirage. Here the concept of fire is divided from the concept of mirage, and in both cases a truth claim is made, and the proposition is either true or false. This is the second act or operation of human thinking in the sense of listening to the logos. In the third stage of thinking, the act of reasoning proceeds through arguments. Right? Now remember, an argument is a set of propositions or statements, where one proposition, the conclusion, is deduced from at least one or more other propositions, which are the premises. So we say the conclusion follows from the premises, which lead to the conclusion and support it. Now, if we think about this in terms of the three operations of thought, we can see that an argument builds upon the first two operations of the human mind. Before we've made a judgment, we've already made a simple apprehension. Before you make the judgment that the fire is a mirage, you have already conceived, which means formed the concepts of fire and the concept of mirage. So your simple apprehension of the concepts of fire and mirage is a more elementary act of your mind than your judgment. And it's only when you say that the attribute of fire is a part of the concept mirage that you actually make a judgment. If I now make a series of judgments that follow a certain pattern or form that we call an argument, then I make an inference from the premises to the conclusion, and I have performed an act of reasoning. So one of your group happens to be a logic student, and he thinks to himself, all human organisms are creatures that need warmth to survive in the Arctic. All the members of my group are human organisms. Therefore, all the members of my group are creatures that need warmth to survive in the Arctic. So in arguing or reasoning, Aristotle thought, we go through a process of inference in which we deduce or extract a judgment from previous judgments. We go from two given judgments, the premises, to a third judgment that is different from the other two, but is also implicitly contained in them. We make what is implicit in the premises to be explicit. So in making an argument, we are reasoning, which is the third operation of the human intellect. Think about it. We say that a statement is true if it lines up with the reality of an actual situation. If I saw a manatee, for example, and it's swimming around and eating plants, then based on what I'm experiencing, I could say, the manatee is a herbivore. Truth, then, is at this level the correspondence of the concept in the mind to reality. So if what I thought in the mind does not coincide with the reality of the actual situation, then it would be false. Truth also comes in with judgment. When I affirm or deny an attribute to a subject, I am making a judgment. When I think, for example, that the manatee is a herbivore, I am affirming the attribute herbivore to the subject manatee. My action in affirming this is a judgment formulated in a proposition, which can then be either true or false. But even before the mind makes a judgment, it has already done a simple apprehension. Even before I make the judgment the manatee is a herbivore, I already conceived individually the concepts of herbivore and the concept of manatee. Thus my simple apprehension of the concepts herbivore and manatee is a more elementary act of my mind than my judgment. We say it is logically prior, which means that the one depends on the other and would not exist without it. It's only when I affirm the attribute herbivore to the subject manatee that I will actually make a judgment. Now, if I make a series of judgments following a certain orderly structure and flow, then I make an inference. For example, all manatees are aquatic creatures. Some herbivores are manatees, so some herbivores are aquatic creatures. In other words, inference is the process of deducing or inferring a judgment from previous judgment. If we think about this in terms of the three operations of thinking, we can see that an argument builds on the first two acts of the human mind. Before we've made a judgment, we've already made a simple comprehension. Before you make the judgment the fire is a mirage, you've already conceived or formed the concepts of fire and mirage. So your simple apprehension of the concepts of fire and mirage is a more elementary act of your mind than your judgment. And it's only when you say that the attribute of fire is a part of the concept mirage that you actually make that judgment. And if I now made a series of judgments that follow a certain pattern or form, called an argument, then I've made an inference from the premises to the conclusion, and I've performed an act of reasoning. And again, for us to practically deal with these things, they have to be verbally expressed, either writing or speech. So we have the verbal expressions of the three acts of human thinking. We give a term or a name to the concept conceived in simple apprehension. Like if I run upon a dog and I just think, dog. Then we have a proposition when we make a judgment, like the dog is barking, and that'll be true or false if the dog is barking or not. And then we have an argument, which stands for inference, right? Which is expressed in an inference or an argument. All dogs are barking creatures. All barking creatures are good boys. All dogs are good boys. So the act of drawing an inference, of making an argument for Aristotle, is composed of three propositions related to each other in certain specific ways. And since arguments are made up of what are called categorical propositions, which we will now proceed to examine in infinite detail. As you will find to be the case in logic, we examine everything minutely, in exact detail. And this drives some people nuts, but it's just the nature of the beast, for it all has to be exact for it to work. And if you think about it, math and computer programming are based on logic, and they similarly have to be very exact. Right? You have to just get it down, dot every I, cross every T, and so on, and get your X's and Y's all in the right places. But before we proceed to minutely examine categorical propositions, I'm wondering if you have any questions. Of course, you can't ask me any questions right now, and I just read that off my lecture notes from when I might have been doing this in class. But you can write down questions and ask me about them in the Zoom session. So I look forward to seeing you, and I'll be coming right back at you with some stuff about categorical propositions. Thank you for your kind attention.